You're listening to The Bold Blueprint with Claire Bartlett. This is the go-to podcast for business owners who are ready to be bold, step into your power and claim the success that you deserve. So whether you're an established business or just starting out, this podcast is your weekly dose of unapologetic inspiration, empowerment, and actionable advice to take your business to the next level. So whether it's the highs, the lows, or everything in between, I'm here to help you build a business that reflects who you truly are. It's time to break the mold and build a business that thrives on your terms. Today's episode is brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. Managing your business finances can feel overwhelming, but Xero simplifies it all and gives you the power to keep your books in order and your mind on growth. Xero have amazingly offered a 50% discount off your first 3 months with them. So if you'd like to take advantage of this amazing deal, just follow the link in the show notes. But for now, let's jump into this week's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Bold Blueprint. Today, I am joined by Kayleigh Greenacre, who is the founder of Actually I Can, which I just love in itself. She now helps female business owners to level up their businesses and to get that success that we all dream of. So, Kayleigh, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me on, Claire.
No, it's good. I'm excited to delve a bit more into your story. So what I've seen online, I find really interesting that you actually started out as you're an assistant head teacher at a school. And I just love that transition. So do you want to take us back to when was it, 2020, 2021, when you moved into this space, and tell us all how that happened for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a journey.
Yeah,
Definitely was a journey. And a very, very challenging time of my life as well, in terms of my personal life as well. So I was at the time sort of going through a divorce, and it was COVID was happening. We were in the middle of lockdown, and there was lots of different things kind of going on, you know, from the personal perspective side of things, and obviously in the world. And it was at a point in my life where I knew that I really wanted to create something to empower women and to really inspire them through kind of a lot of self-reflection, self-work. I was massively into positive psychology, and also was an entrepreneur on the side anyway. So I'd had a business since the age of 25. But I knew I wanted to do something more. And it was almost as if that was my opportunity to really think about, okay, how can I create something, and what can I create that will really support people's mindsets, but also support them with following their dreams, building something that they truly feel aligned with. And so the whole concept and idea of it stemmed in the middle of lockdown. And I originally started writing a book and started to share my own thoughts and processes and how to really support people with following their dreams. And then one thing led on to another, and gradually over time, I sort of built this concept and idea for my business and decided to go all in with it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to show the other women out there what is possible and how we can continue to follow our dreams, regardless of the setbacks, the challenges and the things that we face, which I'm sure we'll dive into more in this episode, and followed that dream and was able to launch my business alongside working as an assistant head teacher. And then I gradually, obviously the business grew very, very rapidly. And I was then gradually able to kind of step back and then leave education and take my business full time.
Amazing. And I love what you hit on there, because they're so integrated, aren't they? Our mindset and the levels of success that we see, really without the mindset being in the right place and having that self-awareness, self-respect, self-belief, you can't really achieve the levels of success that we can dream of. So how do you support clients with that? And do you see the connection? You think it's super important to deal with both sides of your business as well?
I absolutely do. I think when I first launched this business, you know, there's always going to be two sides, isn't there? Especially as a business strategist and business coach, there is the strategy side of it, but there is also that massive element of mindset. And I do believe that, you know, those that go all in and lean all into the mindset side of things, where they're investing in their mindset, not necessarily in terms of money, but investing in their mindset daily, where they're, you know, really focusing on their self-belief, their positive psychology, and how they're speaking to themselves. It's that self-talk, I think, is so important and so valuable. And it is those that invest in that on a daily basis, I believe, are the ones that are going to succeed and rapidly increase the success sooner rather than others.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think there's a saying, I'm sure you've heard it, but if you believe that you can or you believe that you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's so true that we can so easily limit ourselves and often not actually even realize that we're doing it in the beginning. It's only when you start becoming more self-aware and listening to how we speak in our minds. And I talk about this all the time because so often the way that we speak to ourselves in our mind, we would never speak to even our worst enemy. But it's so ingrained in our subconscious that we don't even realize that we're doing it anymore. So how can we, or how did you start switching that on and becoming self-aware and then changing that to such a positive mindset?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of it is down to, like you said, it's the self-talk. It's how we kind of, in a sense, fall into this habit of how we speak to ourselves and the daily routines, the daily things that we do. And absolutely, I agree with what you said there in terms of the famous saying, if you say you can, you can't, you're absolutely right. I think the more that we lean into the concept and the idea of anything is possible and you can achieve whatever you want to achieve, the more likely you are, obviously, to achieve it. Because I think when you tell yourself daily that you can do something, and we as entrepreneurs, and hopefully everyone does know this, but it's not going to always be an easy ride. It's not going to be an easy journey. There's so many obstacles and challenges and things that come up for us. But we are all strong enough to work through those. And with your own supportive network and community and things as well, that will also help. But I do believe that, it's really, really important to keep telling ourselves that we can do this, and I'm sure everyone along their journey, in their personal lives or in their careers, etc., have faced other challenges and they've been able to get through those. So again, I think as entrepreneurs, it is a case of really having that full belief. And there's different ways of being able to, to support you with that. So I know some people like journaling, some people like meditation, some people like just literally going to the gym or going for an early morning walk. And I think it's about finding something that will keep you energized, motivated, and focused every single day to keep you working towards that end goal.
Yeah, I know you mentioned on your website, for instance, and I've seen your post before, that you are very heavily driven by your why, which is your daughter, and inspiring your daughter that she can achieve anything and showing that to her. So how important is having that why and then keeping that in your mind? So allowing that to be the driver.
Yes, your why, I believe, drives so many people, and it definitely has. Like you've just mentioned, it's driven me. It's been my biggest motivator to show my daughter what is possible for us as women. I think, from my perspective, I've come from the education system as well as entrepreneurship, but I've come from the education system as my main career, and I've grown up in a society where males generally do earn more. Males are the CEOs of the companies or bigger global companies, etc. And what I've always wanted to do is to break the trends. I've wanted to be able to show women, and especially obviously for my daughter, that we can achieve as greatly as men can, and we are able to follow those dreams and be able to to reach whatever goal we want, as long as we've obviously got the mindset and the strategy. And I think with a why, with going back to why, and everyone has their why and they have their purpose, but with your why, it's almost as if it's that background motivator, isn't it? That little driver. As long as we're continuing to remind ourselves of our why, it will keep us grounded. Because I think the online space is so noisy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of distractions, and actually one of the hardest things, I think, for anyone, is to stay in their lane and to stay focused. And I think with your why in the back of your mind will support you not only with your mindset, but it will also support you with keeping you focused, so that you're not necessarily then distracted from all the noise in the background.
Yeah. And it can change, can't it? As your business develops and as your life evolves, the reason, that why can change, but it's just knowing the purpose behind it all, why you are doing what you're doing, why you get up every morning and go towards your business. And for me, mine is, basically the same as yours. It was my daughter. When I gave birth to my daughter, I wanted more balance in my life and more flexibility with my working, but I also, exactly the same as you, wanted to prove to her that actually anyone in the world can do anything as long as we have that belief in us. And I think one of the things that's been missing from us growing up, you and me, is that we just didn't have the visibility of successful women. We didn't have those role models around us. So if we can be that for our children and we can campaign and support other female business owners to achieve that so they can be role models in their space. I think it's so powerful, and I think the tide is changing slightly. We're seeing more and more support and noise around female business owners, really successful ones. In fact, recently, I don't know if you saw it in the news, but there was large supermarket in the UK had a whole aisle that was purely for female-founded products. Did you see about it?
No, I didn't, but amazing. This is
it was so amazing. And I was so pleased that we, made this step. And it's a large brand. So for them to be making that noise, obviously they got so much backlash, oh, well, it shouldn't matter. And I said, yeah, but the thing is, I did a post on it. We have presumed, everybody really walks into a supermarket and almost presumes that every aisle is a male-owned business aisle. So for them to just take that time to create that space in their, in their stores and say, no, these are all really proudly female-led products. So many of them are household names that we use every day, but we just didn't know. So being able to take my daughter there and say, all of these products that they're all made by women. You could have a product on a main supermarket. And I just think it's amazing to have that inspiration and that visual aid to help us with that dream, that we can achieve any of these things.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, go on, Kayleigh.
No, absolutely. I was going to say as well, and just through years of experience of teaching and education and actually looking at younger people, I know we're female entrepreneurs and we've been through journeys and we're continuing to grow as we scale our businesses and all the things, but actually through years and years of teaching and educating children, and it's really fascinating to have conversations with the younger generation in terms of what their goals are. And so many of them, you'll hear the boys want to be gamers or footballers and the girls want to be normally in the hair and beauty industry or the dentists, etc. And it's really, really fascinating. And I had a conversation with my daughter the other day actually about this, and she said, Mummy, when I'm older, I want to have my own business. That's the first thing that she said. And obviously I think it's again for the inspiration that I'm giving her. Yeah. But then she said, but I'm also quite interested in being a scientist. And we started to dive into this concept. And then she was quite interested in this idea of maybe being an engineer. And it just lights me up with these possibilities just from conversation with a 7-year-old at the time. But it does fascinate me. And I do think over the last at least decade, more and more opportunities, obviously with the focus of STEM in schools and entrepreneurship and how we're seeing so many successful entrepreneurs come through now. It's just a perfect opportunity for not only children, but actually for any age to see what is possible.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think we're really on the precipice of great change now. Finally, I think things are really, really going to start happening. And it's just, important for us all to continue that message, I suppose, isn't it? And to continue to inspire. So you work mainly with female founders, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And that was a conscious decision for you that's the market that you wanted to go in and support?
Yes, it was. So again, I think based on my own personal experiences in my career, and I've always been a firm believer that I can achieve whatever I want to achieve and no one's going to stop me. I'm very, very driven in terms of my mindset and always have done. But again, through my own experience of working in education, it frustrated me and annoyed me that there was so much male domination in terms of everything. So I made a really, really strong focus and with my mission for my business to ultimately to support just female entrepreneurs.
Yeah. I think it's right, for us, we're allowed to have these spaces that are just for women. I think so often the female founders that I've worked with and that I've spoken to, sometimes they can actually feel quite intimidated if it's a shared space and they don't necessarily feel like they can take up the same space and share their voice as much. So sometimes to have that, I know that you have a membership as well, don't you? You have community alongside your business. Sometimes I think that's what women need. We need just a safe space where we can show up and be ourselves and not feel that judgment or that pressure, which, to be honest, breaks my heart that that's how things are. But
yeah,
hopefully, like we've mentioned, that will start changing. The tide on that will change. But the community aspect, has that been something that you knew at the very beginning that you wanted, or is that something that's just evolved with your business?
Yeah, so in terms of building a community, it's always been something that I've always wanted to do. So again, through my own experiences and just what you mentioned, actually, in terms of having a mixed community. I mean, I can take myself back to, basically being in the senior leadership team of the school. But around that boardroom table, it was predominantly males, with a couple of us being females. And did I speak out? No, I didn't, because I didn't feel that I had that courage. It took me a couple of years as a senior leader to actually find my voice around the table, even though the teacher was very supportive. He was male, very supportive. And I think, again, that kind of opens up your eyes that I've always wanted the opportunity to have safe spaces and to be able to be or feel heard. And I think a lot of people don't always get that, or don't feel that they have that in certain situations and communities and circumstances. So for me, it was always about building a safe space, a safe community, and allowing people to feel supported, whether they're in my paid community or whether they're in my free community. For me, it was always about supporting and being open to listen, being open to, to support people from any aspect, with any background, and to be able to support them moving forwards with whatever their dreams and goals were.
Yeah, love that. And you've mentioned it a couple of times already, but strategy, obviously you are mainly, it says business strategist is sort of the label that you go by the strongest. How important is strategy to a business? So we've spoken about the mindset, you've got your mindset set. What's the next step? Is that getting the strategy in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always think that, without a strategy, you're going to struggle. And strategy is a word that is thrown around a lot in the online space. And ultimately, we as strategists are fully aware that business, consists of lots of different areas, and you should have technically a strategy for every aspect of your business. So I always say that, make sure you've got a strategy in place, make sure you've got your systems and your processes. But before any of that, put the foundations down first. And that's a step that a lot of people skip. I see a lot of people posting on social media and sharing their offers, which is incredible. But I always say to people, have the foundations laid first, and then build strategies upon each of the layers of your business in order to create a successful business that is able to be sustainable, and obviously to have that consistency.
Yeah. So you've actually sort of hinted on to my next question anyway, but like you say, the word strategy is used in so many different meanings by so many different people. It just seems to be everywhere. So if you are a relatively new business and you're hearing this word, but you just don't really know what it means, can you break down into real simple steps what a strategy actually means for your business?
Absolutely. So in terms of strategy, what I would always recommend for anyone that's potentially a little bit confused or not really certain what it is, have a clear, measurable action plan. Have steps, have something, a system in place that will be able to support you. So if I was to give an example to make it really simple, a lot of people will talk about strategy through content, and that's something that a lot of people want to have, a clear strategy to be able to make sales through content. So what that strategy would look like, obviously it will vary and depend for every individual, as every strategy should be bespoke to them. But when it comes to, say, for example, a content strategy, that would consist of things such as a plan of what to post, obviously daily schedules and posts, what that actually looks like, take them through what I would call the buyer's journey to support them with the different elements in sales psychology. So you're looking at breaking down the elements of a particular area of your business, such as content or sales or lead generation, and then making an action-based plan to support you with implementing it, testing and trying it, and then obviously reviewing it in order to improve it further.
Amazing. Now, in my business, I have a 1 year, a 3 year, and a 5 year strategy. So I look, I break my goals down. So these are sort of short term. This is what I want to do in the next year, leading then to my 3 year and then to my 5 year. How do you teach it? What length of time do you think a strategy should be made for?
Yeah, so again, it kind of depends on sort of how people enter my world and programs and what we're kind of focusing on. We always look at obviously the long-term goals. So yes, we always look at the 1, 3 and 5 year, especially if they're working with me for a longer period of time. But then what I normally tend to do is we have a little look. I always say to people, if you're going to test a strategy, try it for 28 days and see what works and what doesn't. And so one of the beginning stages, especially if people are coming into kind of my mid programs, is we will work on a strategy. We will aim to test and try it for 3 months. But those first 28 days are the perfect opportunity for us to really test it and see what works, what doesn't work, how it performs, and all of those things as well. So there are different ways that I kind of teach strategy in that concept of time. But absolutely, I mean, I would 100% agree with you. It's really important to have strategies that are, for the longevity of your business, but then also to test and try things that you're looking at to work on certain mini areas of your business as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you need to have the sight of the 3 to 5 year plan, where you're wanting your business to go. Because if you don't have that, then you're constantly just going to be flying blind. But you need that to then work on those smaller strategies and those things that you want to do, in the next 3 to 6 months, because they are the steps that will get you to those bigger goals.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So you were talking then about, having tangible actions that you can track and see if they're working. How do you do that? Because this is the area that people really struggle with.
In terms of tracking and analysing data and all the things. This is my favourite thing.
I think people feel really overwhelmed. I mean, I sometimes in the beginning when I was looking at the data, I was like, I can see the numbers, but I don't really know what it means. So how do you get people to start understanding that and know where to look for the information?
Yeah. So again, depending on the strategy that we're working on, if just as an example, if we're looking at sales, content, or lead generation, data is absolutely the one thing that you're going to love, because it will tell you an awful lot. So if we're looking at content, you're going to look at the analytics data. If we're looking at sales, we're looking at actual figures. If we're looking at lead generation, we're looking at the leads coming in and then the conversion. So it gives us a great opportunity to look and analyze that data. I always provide my clients with templates and systems and ways to be able to obviously look at that data. And then I teach my clients how to use that. Or for those that are in my higher programs, I support them and we will look through it together and strategize based on that. But I think for any of the listeners to the podcast, I always would recommend people to find a system where they can track and then analyze that data. If you're like me, I am an absolute lover of a spreadsheet. Most people hate them.
Yeah, I'm an accountant as well, so a spreadsheet is my jam. Love a good spreadsheet. Mine is also in a spreadsheet form.
Amazing. I love a spreadsheet, whereas some of my clients hate them. Yeah. And they will use systems online. And I know there's so much available out there at the moment. I can't even think off the top of my head some of the systems that they use to kind of keep track of their own things. But I will always give my clients Excel spreadsheets and templates that everyone can obviously access and then implement their own data and we can analyze it together. But I definitely think find a system, find a way, even if it's, even as simple as a Word document, if you just want to write it down to start with, it's a great starting point. But I would always recommend to people, always look at your numbers, look at the data. What does it tell you? Because if we're not analysing that regularly, we're not going to be able to identify as easily what's working, what's not working. And it's fascinating sometimes, especially when you look at the analytics of things. It's fascinating, isn't it, to see where the trends are and what's performed really well and what isn't.
It can sometimes be really surprising as well, actually. Sometimes it's things that you thought would be like the least popular. That's the one that's taken off, image-wise and things. So what I hear a lot, though, is when it's a new business or they're just starting out, well, I don't have any data. Like there's nothing for me to track. And then they think, oh, it's not something I need to worry about in the beginning. But actually, it's quite the opposite. And yes, you won't have things that you can mark it against, historically. But if you just start collecting the data in the beginning, soon enough, it will actually start showing you trends, won't it? And start showing you useful information for your business that you can then use to keep tweaking to move forward. So yes, it won't necessarily be meaningful data in the beginning, but it's the start of all of that, isn't it? And just building that process in your business, I suppose, to be looking at the data.
Absolutely. I agree. Part of your process and actually building into your habits, a little bit of a routine or a habit, whatever you want to call it. I would call it kind of like one of the elements of our, we call them success lists. So I don't like to-do lists and success, success lists are what we focus on. And actually building that in, even if it's just once a month and you review it at the end of the month and you have a little look at what's performed well in terms of content, where your sales are, where your leads are, in terms of bringing in new people, new inquiries. And I think even just the simple things like that, look at the numbers, look at the basic numbers. How many inquiries have I got that have come in the last 28 to 30 days? How many sales have I made and for what offers? What pieces of content have performed really well? And just look at the views and the engagement, and even just really simple numbers and data like that to start with is a great starting point without making it too complex.
Yeah, exactly. I think when we look at social media, I mean, there's a lot of vanity around social media. There's a lot of, oh, I want to get 10,000 followers. But when you delve into that, okay, why? What is the purpose of that goal? So I think it's really important to not get blinded by what everyone else is doing in social media, what success looks like to you on other people's platforms. And actually, you can have 10,000 followers, but zero traction. Or you can have 100 followers, but every single one of them is engaged to buy with you and really, work. So the number of followers isn't what's important, but it's looking at how much engagement you get, how much traction you get on those posts, and then copying that style of post. So it might be reels for you, it might be flat posts, but there's loads of different information that you can take that shows you what to do more of on your platforms, not just getting blinded by what everyone else is doing.
So metrics and, just looking at that. And I think it is so easy, isn't it, as well, to kind of get distracted with things that are online. It's just, I think it's just really, really important to focus on the data, to focus on, your goals and what you're setting yourself out to, to achieve, to create. And ultimately, I know we touched on this earlier as well, but kind of bringing it back to that community. I think a lot of people worry and focus on, making enough sales, is my content performing, as much as it can to turn this into a sale. And although that's the end goal and that's what we want to do, but, at the same time, I think we really have to think about what's the value that we're giving our audience? How are we supporting our community? And then actually, although the data is so important in terms of analytics and looking at what performs best, but the other side to that is actually building that community and being able to give people value and support people as best we can, because ultimately then when we create that community, when we're able to share value and show people what is possible, we can then obviously, they'll be able to see how we can support them, and ultimately that can then turn into sales, and that can help us grow our businesses.
Yeah, exactly. It's about creating, warm, interested leads, isn't it? And creating that community that actually engage with what you do and that learn from, have that value from your post, not just having empty followers or paid for followers as a vanity thing, which I think we can often get really blindsided by. And I know when I was, some of my socials still have really low numbers, if I'm honest, because I haven't really focused on that platform. And it would be easy for me to go on Instagram, for instance, be like, God, I really should have 10,000 followers by now, or look at everyone else in my space, they're all doing this. But actually, I know that I'm connecting much better with my clients on Facebook, for instance, and LinkedIn. So that's where I'm focusing my energy. And it's about being able to prioritize that in my mind and notice that, I could spend energy on Instagram, but is that actually going to convert, into leads? Not for me personally at the moment. I should focus on these other areas. So it's about, and again, it comes down to strategy, doesn't it? It's looking at these platforms, which ones are going to work for me best now. And Instagram will be something built into my strategy in the future when I have more time. Always time. It always comes down to time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So how do you work in your social media? Are you on all platforms now, or do you prioritize?
Yeah, so I'm on all main platforms. So Instagram, Facebook are my two main ones, and then I'm also on LinkedIn and TikTok for slightly different purposes, because obviously each platform is different. And my ideal clients, for example, my communities are, again, they do range in terms of where they can be found. But I do think for some people, it is really important to put your focus on one or two platforms maximum, especially within your first couple of years. And then you're able to obviously grow. So just as an example, for TikTok, I am not a TikTok queen at all.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm on the platform to try and test it. And I'm spending 6 months trying and testing TikTok. I know that my ideal clients are not necessarily on TikTok as much as they are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So TikTok, it's my experimental platform. It's the platform I'm having a little bit of fun with and just playing around with. But ultimately, my main ones are Instagram and Facebook, and then obviously LinkedIn for a different purpose for the other side of my business.
Yeah. And this is my point, I suppose, that if you try and do all of them in the beginning, you'll end up doing none of them very well. So it's about focusing on the one or two main areas where you think your ideal clients will be. Yeah. And as your business grows, you can grow onto the other platforms, test them out like you are now with TikTok. But it's so easy to overwhelm ourselves in the beginning of business, isn't it? And think, I need to be everywhere. I need to be doing all of these things. This business for me is alongside another business. So the same as you in the beginning, I don't have unlimited time to do everything. So I need to strategize where I'm going to make the most difference in the time that I have at the moment. Yeah. How did you find that in the beginning, juggling, having a full-time job and then trying to set up your business and being a single mum?
It was really, really hard.
Yeah.
The juggle was very, very hard. And I think a lot of people, I'm sure, will be able to resonate with this if they're listening and they are juggling. And whether that looks like juggling a business and a career, juggling two businesses, juggling being a mum, or juggling everything, it's really challenging, isn't it? And I think in terms of managing that, I have always been, if I'm being completely honest with you, I've always been a workaholic. I've always been very dedicated to succeeding and to getting results in whatever career and business I've been in. And so for me, that's a massive driver for me, as well as my daughter. It's, I've got to work because I need to get the results because I need to do this. But and that can then end to, or follow through to exhaustion, to overwhelm. So there's lots of different things that, you can experience along the way. So for any workaholics out there listening, then take my advice of just make sure you give yourself a bit of a break and obviously celebrate the things that you have done. But I think, for general advice in terms of juggling, I think it comes down to, and again, strategy, but also organization and time management. What are the priorities? Having a look at, if you break it down into quarters or then into your months, what are the main things that I want to do and focus on this month? And then actually, how much time do I have to do that? As I started off as a coach more than a strategist, I was spending, obviously, most of my time was coaching people or posting on social media. And so therefore, I only had evenings, and only evenings without my daughter being here, which was 2 evenings a week, where I could actually coach. So my coaching capacity was 6 hours, 3 hours on a Monday evening, 3 hours on a Thursday evening. And that is all I could do. So I had to build a business around 6 hours of coaching opportunities. And then social media was when Sophia went to bed or X, Y, and Z. So as you can imagine, even that was a juggle, trying to build a business with only limitations of 6 hours of actual delivery. Yeah. And so that's another thing to consider as well with, anyone that's listening. Think about your business model. Think about how you can grow a business, but strategically so, saving yourself time and energy. Because if you are juggling being a mom or caring for your family, or of course, having a career as well, potentially, that's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on yourself. So I think strategically, regardless of whatever you see other people doing online, do and create a business model that is going to work for you. It doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. It's about you. It's about your your health and well-being. And ultimately, that end goal, you can get to whatever that end goal is in so many different ways. And depending on your business, of course, but think about how can you do this in the best way possible so that you can manage your time effectively.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's about being sustainable, isn't it, in your life? And this goes down to really what success looks like. And success should look different for every single person. Yeah. Someone might want that 6-figure business working every hour God sends. Some people might just want to work 6 hours a week around their family, and that is success for them. So it's about understanding what success really looks like for you. And at the time for you, that was filling those 6 hours with coaching and starting that transition. Obviously, that goal has changed as your business has grown, which is amazing. And now you're full time, but that wasn't achievable for you in the very beginning. So it's about being kind to yourself and not putting so much pressure, I think, in the beginning, because success does not come overnight. And being an entrepreneur is incredibly hard. And I think sometimes people just take this step and they're like, yeah, I'm going to set up this business and I'm going to be doing this in 6 months. It's not necessarily going to happen that quickly. It's about understanding that, being kind to yourself and realizing that you need to put work in. And I think sometimes people can miss that and think it can be an overnight success.
I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because again, there's a lot of mixed messaging and potentially misleading messaging, if I dare say the word misleading, but misleading messaging out there that does imply that you can have success overnight, or when we say overnight, but we mean quick success. But ultimately, it does take time. You're right. It takes time. It takes work, it takes energy, it takes strategy, it takes scheduling. It takes so many different things in order to get to that point. And even to be honest with you, at the beginning stages of my business, I was sold a lie. I was sold a dream that I would be able to leave education, leave teaching in 6 months and, have a multiple 6-figure business. And when I look back and I think, why did I believe that? Why? Because I suppose it could happen. But, but the reality is it takes a lot of time and energy. And because I was already in a career and also a mum and all the things, the reality of that was that, it's not really going to happen. So I think, again, it was a bit of a wake-up call to me when I launched my business and then could only work 6 hours, a week, as we've discussed. And therefore, that's only going to bring in a certain amount of revenue, right? So then how do you scale that? How do you get to that next level if you've only got a certain amount of time? So I definitely believe that the success overnight thing is very misleading, and there are a lot of messages out there. Not so much now. I feel like it was more so previously, a couple of years ago. I think a lot of integrity is definitely there a lot more now, and honesty and transparency. But I do think that for anyone that is listening, overnight success is not really a thing. But what is a thing is by having a plan, having that strategy and that mindset, and actually working a little bit every day can go a long way. Putting that little bit, whatever you do, even if it is just posting that post or sending that email, that is another step in the right direction. And those little steps, those little things every single day will lead to that end goal eventually. But it sometimes takes a little bit longer for others, or for some than others, depending on their circumstances and situation.
Yeah. So that exactly is, so my word of the year, I don't know if you have words of the year, Kayleigh, but mine for 24 was momentum. I just had to move forward and take a step forward every single day towards my business, because so this Female Founders, this business was created in December 23. So it's still, it's nearly a year old, nearly about birthday time.
Yeah.
But I always knew I'm a very driven person, but I had to limit my goals for this year because I knew I still had my other business to run. So I wasn't going to be able to give it full-time energy. And, and it has taken control, I suppose, and being kind to myself, like I say, to understand that I'm going to move this business slower because I have those limitations. But I still have that passion, and I still make sure that every single day I take that step, like you say, and move forward with it. And I know that those goals will happen eventually. But that's, again, moving back to why it's important to have that why and have that driver. So on the days where it's been really tough, I can remember that and move forward. Do you have a word of the year?
Yes, so mine for this year, for 2024, is the moment that we're recording this episode, it's currently impact. And I set that at the very beginning of the year. I sat down with my partner and we always map out our goals for the year and together, and we analyse and look at where we've come and what we want to do for the year moving forwards. Impact was my word for this year because I wanted to positively impact as many women as possible. And when I talk about impact, not just necessarily through sales and money, but impact in a positive way where they would feel better, more confident, their lives would change in one way or another, they'd have more freedom, and then ultimately, obviously, have the wealth and the business that they desire in the end.
Love that. Have you decided on 25's word yet?
I haven't actually. No, it's definitely a job for me in December. December's always my time to, to have a little look at my business strategy and business development. So I will be working out my word for next year, but I'm not quite certain what it's going to be yet.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. I have a few. I have about 3 shortlisted, and I need to decide which one I'm going to go with. But Kayleigh, thank you so much for joining me today. So you've already mentioned Facebook and LinkedIn are your main ones, and Instagram. So is it just Kayleigh Greenacre that they can find you?
Just Kayleigh Greenacre. So it's nice and easy to find me.
Perfect. Well, I'll put all the links in the show notes for everyone as well. But yeah, just thank you so much for joining us today. I really loved that conversation. And thank you to the listeners for sticking with us this week. And I will speak to you all next week. Take care. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode, which was brought to you by Xero Accounting Software, a champion of small businesses and a proud sponsor of the Bold Blueprint podcast. If you're running a small business and you are dreaming big, then Xero is here to help make those dreams a reality. Xero is all about supporting entrepreneurs just like you. who are not just running businesses but are also changing the game. So, whether you're just starting out or you're scaling up, join a global community of small businesses who trust Xero to manage their finances efficiently.